So, people living as data. We understand the majority of the brain's functions. We know that it's electrochemically powered and works electrochemically. Okay? So, we soon are going to uncover the secrets of how memories are stored and how we can use them. Now, binary is very different from wherever the hell the brain is doing, but I believe that there is a way we can bridge the gap between them. We already can turn chemical signals from nerve endings into electronic signals and use the electronic pulses from the nerves into a chip to control limbs that are robotic. We can already take a nerve out of someone's skin, slap it on a disc, put it on there, not a disc, on a chip, put it on there, and power a robot arm as if it were our own. Our nervous system can adapt to that. So why can't we adapt our nervous system to data storage? If we were able to create a fluid data storage system that could store electric binary in a freeform habitat so that it's always circulating and always running and always powered just like the brain is, and we could put the same patterns that our brain makes with neurons and have resistor-like neuron data bits and physical components on a computer like a Raspberry Pi of sorts. And through those physical connections, make a matrix of floating electrical signals that would simulate the always-on state of the brain and the always reformatting, always learning style, then we would theoretically be able to do a scan of our brains, or fucking tear open a brain or something, to get a snapshot of the brain and all of its neurons, all of the millions of neurons, and get a snapshot of it and where every pulse is going and everything. If we could pour together all of our brain studies, all of our scanning, all of our sensory equipment to get one snapshot video of a brain, like a 10th of a second video, to show maybe even 5 frames of just every single neuron and every single pulse, or maybe even just a section of the brain, just the main memory components, and then put that onto a data set, onto a chip, into freeform storage, onto cloud storage, any kind of freeform storage that is always running, not like a disk or a cartridge, and thus do everything a brain does. Why can't we do everything a brain does? Our brains are not theoretical. Our brains are literal. The most complex thing in the universe that we still do not fully understand, and the majority of people have no conception of, is there are 8 billion of them to choose from. 7.3, 7.2. Point being, they're everywhere. They're in your head. Why aren't we taking every opportunity to study these and make them digitally? Imagine life where you could live digitally and not in the World of Warcraft sense. Imagine if you had a clone of you on some kind of USB stick that has freeform storage, and you could plug any peripheral into it, and the formulas on there, just like the formulas in your own brain, you could tap into it and control that peripheral like a sight or hearing peripheral, and read the signals it gets from it and learn from them and adapt to them. You could have a dead relative, a relative who got clinically who got terminally ill, who got cancer, and let's say breast cancer or testicular cancer or some kind of cancer in the body, arm cancer, leg cancer, some kind of cancer in the body, and they had a month to live, and you had the money and the opportunity to do one of these scans on their brain and put them onto data storage and then carry them around with you, or plug them into a full mechanical peripheral and have them live with a body again, or synthesize a new organic body through cloning and then put them into it. Imagine if we could make hollow brains and then plug data into it and have someone live through that brain. All that makes us who we are our memories and certain areas of the genetic coding, which also help baseline personality. And also, there's an idea that I have where it's your personality takes on shells. There's a core personality, which is very vague. And then every encounter you have that reshapes your personality is another layer. And the layers can be varying thicknesses. Very, very thick layers are when you go through extreme personality changes. Like going through a very hard to understand death that you repress. Or another death that makes you lose empathy. Or seeing something so emotional that brings you empathy. Why can't we... it has to already be being done. Someone has to be conducting these kind of studies to be able to recreate a brain and all of its chemical functions into physical and non-physical data storage. And if we can get this data storage, we wouldn't even need our peripherals. This is the kind of stuff that was written about in science fiction. This is the kind of stuff that was written about to be of past levels of genius civilizations in science fiction. The foreigners had still not mastered a concept of bridging the gap between organic and data. The Prometheans were failed attempts at turning humans into data soldiers. And that's why they turned into the monsters that they were. But the hard light and all the fancy stuff that we wrote about in science fiction isn't even necessary. All we need to do is recreate brain functions to make this formula repeat itself so that the character, which is the important part, the only difference between a character from a story and a character everywhere else is your perception. But from an outside viewpoint, from a viewpoint that is collective and is not just personal and human, there's more. You cannot deny the fact that no matter what your mental condition is, or your view of these characters is, you are deciding for them. Maybe not you, but your brain is deciding for them. You are thinking their actions and prehensing them. You have the core personality in your head, and you layer on the things, even if you feel like you have no control over them. And you may have no control over these characters, but your brain does. And your brain does these things. Every character needs a brain to decide for them based on their stimuli. We can't make a brain purely theoretically. We can, but not to the outside world. So, if we could put people onto these data storages, it would be amazing. Can you imagine living as one of these? And having... It'd be a sense of immortality beyond immortality. It's beyond my theory of just cloning yourself over and over again into younger bodies to live forever. It's... you get to choose your appearance on screens and holograms. It's You get to choose your peripherals. You get to choose an organic body. You get to go into data games, online games, video games, where other people go, and punch in the same electrical signals as their buttons put in at insanely faster rates, and play alongside them. We already know that when you go to a chat room and you talk to people, the people could not be people. They could be bots, very well-written bots, or they could be all the same guy. All the same person. So, what's preventing you when you're playing your game that other character is not a CPU, but a CPU? Just a human CPU. A reaper, if you will, of a human, instead of just a speciesless personality. The brain type is of human. Now, whether or not this is the same equation we're looking for, is the same equation in every intelligent being? Most likely not. But maybe. Point being, imagine how much space you would have as a digital existence. Imagine if entire hotels were replaced with server buildings, and one apartment could fit a few dozen of these servers, and each server could fit a few thousand humans. Overpopulation wouldn't be about starvation and food. It would be about just pure electricity. We may even... No, it's a definite that existing as a digital storage would take up much less energy, because you're only powering just the brain. You're not powering the heart, or the lungs, or the limbs, or the extraneous nervous system, or the skin, or the liver, or the kidneys. You're not powering anything but the brain. Imagine the energy you save. We don't need these other things. We can exist without these other peripherals. We can plug ourselves into things already, but only through our main nerve endings. How long before we can recreate neurons? How many neurons does it take to make a basic brain circuit? Just like the first circuitry of basic copper wiring and light bulb filaments, we can also create digital versions of neurons, pair them up with each other, run electrical signals through them just as chemical signals would go through the physical neurons, and see what happens, and then accelerate the complexity of the circuit to a point where it reaches brain status. So much of the millions of neurons must be repeated, and if we take out all the repetitions, how complex really is the brain? We had these amazing conceptions of how complex something like childbirth or pregnancy was, and it's very fucking simple. It's as simple as well, it's not entirely simple, but the concept of the impregnation isn't simple. There's a huge trek that sperm goes through to get to the egg, but once it gets to the egg, it's really simple. Fertilization and embryonic development is just duplication in a strangely formatted way, so that forms the endocrine system, and then, it forms into the body based on reading DNA. But DNA, the source of all this stuff, is so fucking simple. It's simple. It's combinations of 4 basic proteins. Amino acids, proteins, same thing, right? Who would have thought that DNA would be so simple? It's insanely simple. It's more complex than binary, yes, but it's not by that many stretches. Just 4 different things, 2 at a time, repeated on a double helix. That's it. Bunched up. It's so physical that you can even, there's kids experiments where you take out the DNA of a pea. You know? Why can't we? And the answer is, in my head, we can. We just need to spend time investing into it. And students of the most high-tech colleges need to look into this. And the best part about this is that human beings do not work well outside of comfortable conditions. Especially space. We're fucked in space. Ultraviolet radiation, gamma radiation, our bone densities, our muscle densities, and we can't repopulate on a spaceship. The baby would have horrible defects. But slap on enough solar panels and you can just power little data humans on chips and robots to do it. And then you could exist inside virtual worlds like we all play in your free time. Why don't we do that?